Welcome to the Hedgineer Podcast, hosted by Michael Watson.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Hedgineer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Watson, where we go over technology, data, and AI within asset managers, hedge fund, and prop trading. So today we had another awesome guest, Jhanvi Virani, the Hedgineer COO, and she walked us through a lot of what she's seeing on the ground deploying AI within asset managers and hedge funds. She walks through how developing skills has really unlocked deploying technology and automation within a hedge fund so that you can translate what's going on in an investment professional or a CIO's head into a skill that starts automating their workflows in ways that are truly transformative and also have turnaround times that previously were unheard of when it came to technology. Also touched on the role of agents being the next step after you take a fund from using AI for the first time, starting to develop custom skills, building connectors across their entire business, and then move that to a system that's starting to run autonomously 24/7, 365. We then touched on a trip that we recently took to Bangalore, work with our awesome team out of there. We hosted an AI event last Friday and all of the fun parts of that trip. Amazing episode. Jhanvi is ahead of the curve when it comes to deploying AI with an asset management and hedge fund. And I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Welcome, Jhanvi, to the show. Yeah. So one of the things that her and I basically spend, from sun up to sundown, talking and thinking through is how we deploy, implement, build AI within asset managers. But I'm curious, how are you using Claude in your everyday workflows? You described a little bit on how you use it for summarization of meetings, even if you're not on them. But walk me through a little bit more of what does your day look like when you're using Claude?
Yeah, so I think my day using Claude has evolved pretty rapidly, but one thing to note is the fact that we as a company have been using Claude for a lot longer than I think the average enterprise user. And I think that we've been using Claude Code specifically for a very long time, and we're both developers. And so I've been trying to build applications with Claude Code that would help me. Like, for example, back when the company was only 8 or 9 people and I was overseeing all the different product sprints that we were doing, I used Claude Code to build this Slack bot that could go in and help me organize tickets, turn conversations into potential action items, things like that. But I think in the past 2-3 months, what's changed very dramatically is the need to actually build some kind of layer between the LLM and the user is starting to kind of rapidly dissolve, where now I can go straight to Claude Cowork and create a scheduled task with just plain English. Now I can go to Claude Cowork and start rearranging my file system or start building PowerPoint decks or Word documents to a level of polish that I wasn't able to do without a more complicated process that was built with very, very high intentions. And so now I think it's a process of just starting to recognize the fact that you can build a lot more with a lot less and getting the creative juices flowing and figuring out what can be automated. So, for example, I don't attend more than 50% of the meetings that are on my calendar. And that's something that's only really been a change for the past 3 weeks. And so now I have a lot more time to be focused on heads down work, focused on having more meaningful meetings with the members of our team, rather than spending time sitting in stand-ups where I haven't really been speaking all of that much because I'm not the person actually building the product. So being able to stay involved without necessarily needing my physical presence has been a huge unlock in my time.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed you doing more, because you sit next to me, is using Cowork over Claude Code. And I started using Cowork, but I went back to Claude Code in multiple terminals.
Why is that?
I think part of it is I have my repos already optimized for using in Claude Code. So I have my operations repo in my home directory that I've got my email plugged into, and I've got my workflows for meeting summarizations or for generating an SOW, iterating on an MSA, building out an offer letter, doing my like different operational work, I have my repo kind of already fine-tuned for Claude Code that I could probably in a day move that over to Cowork, but I'm just pretty comfortable with it. I like being able to fork multiple different sessions at the same time. I think, at least when I was we were looking at Cowork the other day, like all the time, but like you only can have one view up, and you can't, because it's an Electron app, you can't see your 6 different Cowork sessions at the same time. So when I'm trying to multitask, you can go from like tab to tab to tab, but if you have a big screen in front of you, you're used to having like at least multiple different apps at the same time. And in Cowork, because it is in the Electron app, I don't think you at least they don't allow you to have multiple different Coworks up, and the tabbing within Cowork, you can't have those up as well, like in multiple on one screen. I'm sure like that's a very easy fix because you can see them, they'll work in parallel, but I like using as much of my screen real estate as I can. I also still like seeing the code when I am doing code, and for moving Cowork completely outside of that, at least for what I'm doing right now, it's beneficial for maybe like 5 to 10% of the work of still being using the code. But because I've just been using Cowork since it was in private preview, and then I've been living in it since it's been in GA for over a year now, that I've tuned my systems a little bit, like my personal workflows to the terminal. But I do see that shifting. Like I love the UX of Cowork and where they're going. Like I like being able to see the connectors on the right-hand side with a little visual icon of what's on and off. And I like being able to see the skills and the plugins that I've connected to.
And the tasks, like all of the different tasks that it outlines, and marking them as done when they're complete is incredibly helpful.
Yes.
I think Cowork is really good for net new work. Like even if I'm developing something, if the repository doesn't exist, I will start in Cowork just because I'm able to see all of the different parts and pieces of, let's say, like the Claude plugin that I was working on a couple of weeks ago, and I can see all of that and monitor that in a very effective way. Once the code base is built and I want to tweak it, that's when I'll go back to Claude Code. I'll still use Claude Code for things that are purely around like code modification. But Cowork has the scheduled tasks in Cowork have been particularly helpful, just because you don't have to set up a cron job. It doesn't work when your machine's off, which is a separate issue, which I'm sure they'll resolve very soon. But it's also helpful because Cowork is what our clients are going to be using more and more. And so it's really helpful to use that almost like a testing ground to see how far I can push the bounds so that I'm able to answer questions that I probably wouldn't be able to answer if I wasn't actually doing Cowork. Like one of the things that I was trying to do with Cowork the other day was I have to submit expense reports every month to our director of finance. And that's something that's very manual and very annoying and very tedious. And so I was trying to figure out how I could, every time I spend money on something and I have the receipt, can I take a photo and just email it to myself and then have a scheduled task that's pulling those receipts directly from email and like storing them in a SharePoint folder that Arthur can see. And so the answer is no, it cannot do that. It cannot actually access attachments. It can only access the HTML preview of said attachment. So it can't actually pull that image or that PDF down. And so that's something that if a client were to ask, oh, is this something that I can automate in my workflow? I have a level of granular context on what is and isn't possible because I'm actually testing it myself.
Yeah, it's interesting that you touch on the schedule task just being local, because when you look at the language that they're using, they're referring it to as a quote local scheduler, and you also have the ability to run remote, which means that there's a term or a VM somewhere that has the Claude Code Agentic Loop installed in it that can run outside of your machine. And it's only a matter of time till that scheduler is something that you could run within their cloud. One of the things that surprised me within Cowork is that I run on a Windows machine. Like most of our team runs on Macs. I still run on Windows. I use WSL, so it's like I have Windows, or I have Linux on Windows. And I was assuming that with Cowork, when it runs code, it's running on Windows, the same as if you use code within desktop. It's actually not true. What Cowork, if you're a Windows user, is doing when it goes to execute code is it's spinning up a little Linux VM container running on your Windows machine that's not WSL, but is still executing code with the file system that you've selected mounted on. And what One, that was surprising. I was expecting it to be like running on Windows and not this Linux container. Because what I was originally hoping to do as a Windows user within Linux, or as a Windows user with Claude Cowork, is connect it directly to my local Outlook machine, my local Outlook application, or my local Excel application, like you can if you're running, for example, Python on Windows, which was a little bit of a bummer, but I see why they do it, because it creates a very consistent runtime, whether you're on Windows or you're on Linux, whether it's local or it's remote.
Yeah. And those bummers are bittersweet, right? Because those are also opportunities for us. Like the entire value prop that we bring to our clients is that we build a system that is complementary to your Claude enterprise system, and that we can build bells and whistles that don't currently exist that are very curated to your firm. So when we find out things like, for example, not being able to schedule tasks on a server, we can build that for a client. And not only can we build that for a client, but we can build it in an incredibly secure way where everything's running within their server. And so these types of small things it's a bummer, but it's also kind of nice, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've done multiple deployments now of our, essentially it's OpenClaw, but with Claude running within our client's environment in a very secure way. Because one of the cool things I love about Claude is that it's all built on the same abstraction, primarily around Claude Code, where there is a language model and a set of tools that are on the machine, and then running within a loop until the language model says, oh, we can break out of this loop. I don't need to call any more tools. I can go and give the user a response. They're the actions that I needed to take or complete. So that's what Claude Code did. And then the Claude Agent SDK used to just be called the Claude Code Python SDK. All it was a wrapper around Claude Code. And even to this day, that's all the Agent SDK is. And then when you go into Cowork, what they had before Cowork is they just had Claude Code running in Electron and in an app on your machine, but it was just Claude Code, and it still is. And so then we're like, oh, so we are using the same agentic loop now in Claude Code on desktop. What if we just removed the word code from the name and called it Claude Cowork? Fundamentally, it's the exact same thing, but you just don't have to worry about the fact that there's code as part of it. And so the audience that can use it is much larger, and it's less intimidating. And they have that running locally. And it's the same thing that you could run into Agent SDK. So for me, the really cool thing about that is that they've created an ecosystem that's great for developers in Claude Code, for non-technical users in Claude Cowork, and for agents in the Claude Agent SDK. And they have all the same features where you can plug in skills into all of them from one place. You can plug in hooks to check for code injection or checked for malicious prompts. You can be able to monitor every session that Claude has with the user, whether it's from the Agent SDK or from Claude Cowork for a user trying to use Claude for the first time, or somebody working on mobile on their way home from work. And so this very cohesive ecosystem makes it pretty awesome for us to be able to modify it on behalf of our clients to ensure like they're not just using Claude effectively, they're actually just using AI better than anybody else. And it's been great to be able to customize that ecosystem in a way that's Hedgineer modified based off of all of our experience, and then give that back to clients in a very consistent way.
Yeah. And I think that for non-developers that are kind of keeping a pulse on AI, I think Cowork was a huge unlock for them, because now they can use this agent that can do so much more than what they were 2 days ago accustomed to, which was the web browser and Claude Desktop, which was essentially just a chatbot with connectors. And now you can have this agent that's running in your system, that's creating, modifying, organizing files, actually synthesizing information from various parts of your computer, and then creating an output. Like, that is transformational for someone that doesn't have the technical skills to build an app themselves. But Hedgineer, since we've been using Claude Code, and since we've been building for clients in this space for 2 years now with Claude, that transition wasn't as big for us, right? Because it was the same underlying technology. And so we're able to build for Cowork in a way that most clients are very surprised by, because Cowork is relatively new. But it's because of the fact that the evolution of the technology is is so linear. It's coming from the same thing that we've been using for so long.
And one of the things I wanted to actually talk to you about was yesterday you were on site with a client, with their CIO, and worked on understanding what is your process? What are you actually doing on a day-to-day? And you translated that into a skill, and I want you to explain that in a little bit. But the very next day, you built them something that is the best representation of their daily process that they now have as though it's like a custom built app in a one-day turnaround. And I thought it was awesome. And the turnaround time, the speed that you did that with is something that it was unfathomable even just 1 year ago, even 6 months ago. Like, walk me through that, because that's something that's like starting to come up over and over and over again.
Yeah. So high level, the engagement that we have with our clients starts with just getting a high level understanding of their workflows, most commonly around research and portfolio management, then translating that into understanding where that data comes from and building custom connectors for them. And so this meeting that I had with the CIO, where I shadowed him for the full day, was after our engineering team actually went in, did that, and set up all of the custom connectors. So now we're living in a world where you can log into Claude and you can access your portfolio from your order management system, consensus estimates from various data vendors, and the internal research models that are sitting in SharePoint. And so all of those things are available in Claude. But now I think the biggest learning curve and the biggest kind of hurdle to jump for most people is actually understanding what's possible once you get there. And so that's kind of how this shadowing session came to fruition. And it's something that I think we're going to continue doing for a lot of our clients moving forward, because a lot of people don't understand what's possible other than just asking, okay, what's my nav for the day? And what are the different positions in my book? And so just sitting down with him and not even talking about AI, just be like, can I just sit at your desk and stare at you for 8 hours and understand what you're doing? And he was incredibly helpful. Like, he would stop and be like, hey, like, this is a high level of like what's going on in my brain. Like, this is how I start my day. This is what I read. This is what matters to me. This is what doesn't matter to me. Every morning, my analysts are sending me notes of like high-level things to cover for their companies. A lot of them are organized in very different ways, but this is how I synthesize them. And then I was like, hey, wait, stop. Let's talk about that for a second. You're reading all of these notes that are formatted in very different ways. Some of these companies are in your portfolio, so you understand them very well, but a lot of them aren't, and you're researching them on the back to make sure that you understand what this news is and why it matters. And so we outlined, okay, this is how I kind of understand a company. Like, this is what I think about in terms of business value. This is what I care about when it comes to upcoming events. This is what I care about when it comes to street consensus, things like that. And so I was able to actually take all of that information from Claude, because all of that information was available via connectors, and draft this very intricate skill that essentially mapped out all of those things in a very detailed way. And then you can go to Claude once that skill is uploaded and say, okay, generate me a one-pager for XYZ ticker. And it'll come out with this very well-formatted PDF that looks exactly the same every single time. And that's very similar to a dashboard. It's very similar to an application, but it's something that could be run on the fly, doesn't necessarily need to be maintained by engineers. And it just works every single day. And so that wasn't a really tough job for me to do, because I'm someone that understands how you can leverage this technology, because we've just been doing it for so long. And so when I think about it, I didn't think about it as impressive at all. I was just like, oh, I just took what you said, turned it into a skill. But for him, it wasn't mundane. It was something that actually adds value to his time, to his day, because he doesn't need to do that synthesis anymore.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's really cool, once you realize that's table stakes, that's something that it sounds novel right now, but everyone's going to be doing this within 6 months, is what needs to happen next. And being able to be building that right now within Hedgineer, where we focus on two components of what we think is next. One is, what is the agent framework that runs that analytics all the time and identifying when there's changes? When there's a drawdown in the fund, or let's say that there is a 5% move plus or minus, how do you run that same workflow and analytics to identify what changed in the lens of what the CIO was thinking. And then also is how do you observe that? How do you observe his or her behavior? How do you observe that agent's behavior? Have another agent evaluate it and make suggestions on what you can do within the system to make it better. Because one of the things that great funds do is that they're always measuring and capturing what they're doing well and what they can improve upon, whether that's talent or decision-making or timing or sizing or factor exposure, and learning from that and trying not to make the same mistake twice. And that's what good funds do. Following that same process to how you use AI inherently includes, well, how do you better size? If you can identify, oh, we actually lost money on a name, can we go back to all of the sessions that we used Claude for? They were part of the research, part of the sizing, part of the bear case, bull case, portfolio manager, analyst back and forth. And all the things we kind of work by ourselves in silence when we're trying to research a name, if that's captured within Claude or any ecosystem that you can capture that thought, it leaves breadcrumbs everywhere. And agents are great at analyzing breadcrumbs. And so being able to data mine that with AI to determine what we need to do to get better, either with the AI systems or with user training, and have that feedback loop be something that's also running 24/7, 365, creates a very powerful mechanism. So what we're doing right now is realizing what you just described. It is transformational for all of our clients today. It's going to become table stakes for all of our clients tomorrow. Under that expectation, what do we then need to be building for today that will then become transformational for them tomorrow and be able to take our clients from an entire journey of, let's make sure that you're just using best practices in AI right now and already have for them the tools and the systems to have that get transformed into agents that are running all the time, that are learning from themselves based off of usage to constantly get better for what we know that they're going to need for tomorrow, and be building that right now.
Yeah, so I think that the skills are a good foundation because they allow people to start to configure Claude to think the way that they think. But then I think that the next step, which is something that we're already building and deploying, is like an organizational agent management framework that is also plugged into this usage analytics system where you have a risk manager agent that is accessible to the entire organization. You can assign them tasks, and there is some level of consistency in terms of what data they can access, how they tend to synthesize information, any organizational rules or governance practices that you want to instill. And having that be consistent and maintainable at the organizational level is something that's still not available in like enterprise licenses like Claude or OpenAI ChatGPT. And so like being able to build that, and not just build that, but build that for our clientele that's deeply embedded with the domain knowledge that's relevant to them, that we know and that our people know, I think will help jumpstart their AI in a way that would take a fund a year plus to do on their own.
100%. Could you actually walk through like what is the tangible process and like deliverables that we give to a client when we do take them from 0 to 1 when it comes to getting them AI native?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just like an audit, like an in-person audit where you're sitting down with the key stakeholders at the fund and understanding what they're doing and what they're frustrated by. And so I think that that's one of the things that having people with experience in this industry unlocks that I don't think the average tech consultant can do. It's really sitting down with these people and understanding what they're doing and being able to kind of connect the dots when it comes to understanding what data vendors they're using, how they're synthesizing that information. And as technologists, being able to find the opportunities for AI the same way that I was able to do with the CIO. Once we do that, it's building this custom connector because all of these data vendors are building MCP servers. And that's obviously where things are going in terms of how to access data programmatically. But the reality of the situation is that some vendors are faster than others. And if you really want to become AI native in the next 6 months, you can't wait for your order management system or your fund administrator or one of these very large data vendors to come out with their MCP servers, because they're dealing with a ton of red tape and bureaucracy on their end, and it's just going to take way too long. So what we do is, once we understand all the different data vendors that they're using, the ones that already have third-party connectors, we work with their managed service provider to make sure that those are on and configured in a way that's compliant with their like internal compliance and governance standards. And then for the data vendors that aren't available via third-party connector, most often those are the order management systems, the factor risk models, the research vendors, the research platforms, sales side broker research, things like that. Building a data warehouse and being able to consolidate all of that information and expose it via MCP so that you could access everything that you need in Claude is the first step. Then the second step is kind of going through and building out these skills that turn this ecosystem into a brain that's very specific to your fund. So it's, are you answering IR questions the way that your IR people are answering them? Are you generating risk reports that look exactly like the ones that are already being generated? Are you looking at the market in the same way that your CIO is looking at the market? And so those are all kind of skills that sit on top of these connectors that are actually taking all these nodes of data and turning them into something that means something real. And then I think the next layer of abstraction are these agents, right? Like, now that you have these skills and now that you're able to go into Claude and effectively prompt it to do exactly what you need, why are you prompting at all? Just have it running in the background. Have it email you a report every week when you know that you need it. And it's something that now you don't even need to think about. And so I think those are that is how you become AI native. And I think throughout all of these layers, I think the usage analytics is the primary unlock, because not only are we learning more about the skills, the agents, the connectors that we need to build through conversations, but now we have agents that are actually analyzing how people are using things, finding new opportunities to streamline even further. And now you're creating what is a self-healing system that doesn't necessarily need us after a couple of months. And that's beneficial to them. It's beneficial to us because now we can scale and move on to the next client. But how do we create an AI framework that is not only powerful, but also self-sufficient? And that is what AI native really means.
Mm-hmm. We had a fun chat with AI in our Teams channel, I think the other day, or our Slack channel, it was called #Teams. Where it wasn't an AI personification. It was actually one of the engineers on our team, Lucien, and it was representing himself as Lucien, but it would say like by Claude and sending messages as a person. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you start having AI kind of like represent you versus having AI be its own persona. And there's pros and cons of the two. I'm curious, how do you think about whether you should have your AI sending messages as Jhanvi or having your AI send your messages as Sven?
I think it's a matter of personal preference. I personally would never want anything to be sent under my name that wasn't written by me. I use AI to write almost everything, but I'm proofreading it, I'm modifying it, and I'm making sure that it sounds and feels like me. I personally would never do that. I understand why people would, and I don't want to kind of diss on them. I just wouldn't do that. I like the idea of having an app doing that for me. So for example, the meeting summarizer that I was talking about earlier, like I set up a Slack application, and then I just generated a webhook within the Slack admin settings, pasted that into the prompt. There was no engineering that I had to do to have it being sent via an app. And so that's what I prefer.
Mm-hmm. And I think I definitely agree in it. I've been victim of auto sending emails as myself, and you lose something when AI is representing itself as you. Like, you lose your voice a little bit. And I think it's something that I think you gotta have to do it a little bit and feel like a little uncomfortable of, to realize, or at least force you to think, why do you feel uncomfortable? And also, we're inundated with AI slop at the same time.
Yeah.
That you can sense it too. Like, I can tell when somebody sends me a LinkedIn message or a Slack message or email, and it's written by AI. My spidey senses go up, and I'm like, and when I sense that, the authenticity and the legitimacy in my need to respond just like completely goes down.
Yeah. And it's also like, it's the delineation of you versus your work, right? Like when you build an agent that sends emails to the broader team, like that is a reflection of your work. When I send an email as me, that's a reflection of me. And so I like that delineation of accountability where when the agent messes up, it's my fault because I built it. But that is more a reflection of the work rather than a reflection of me and the reputation that I have. So I like having that separation.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to have that separation and make that a conscious decision before you start having AI send all your messages for you.
Yeah. And I also think that just because you use AI to generate your emails doesn't mean that it needs to be obvious. Like AI generates all of my emails, but no one can tell because I put a lot of time and thought into the prompts that I'm crafting. My prompts are often longer than the email themselves because I want to be very clear about the tone, the goal, the overall, like, I don't know, message that I want to get across in a very specific way. And so the final output doesn't look or feel like AI at all. And I take a lot of pride in that. And I think that people that are using AI to generate emails and they're generating emails that, like you're referring to, are just very clearly AI generated, you're doing something incredibly wrong in how you're prompting the AI because we're past the stage where outputs are always either very clearly AI or very clearly not.
Yeah. I do think there's something to be said of AI emails not being needed entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that what that means is that it should have been an AI responding automatically. Like, and that should be work that you do not need to delegate to yourself. And there are some conversations where it can just be the sender's AI communicating to your AI, communicating to the sender's AI, communicating to your AI.
It's like conversations that would happen with administrators.
Yes, and it's very transactional.
AI.
Like, it's like, I need information from you, you give me information, I send you information, you give me information, and there's very little human element, and it's just a transaction. And I think for scenarios like that, like having an AI go back and forth totally makes sense because it's just information transaction, and there is no human element to it. But then is email the best way for those two agents to communicate with each other? And I think that'll be interesting, especially within an organization, for that to kind of evolve a little bit. Because if it's information passing back and forth, the likelihood that one agent can go and get that information without having to contact a human or another agent once Claude has access to 100% of a firm's internal and external data, there is no back and forth. That single agent, that Claude itself should be able to gather all of that information for you.
Mm. How important do you think in this world is it to have some user interface where you can go and actually understand the history trace of what happened? Like, how accessible does that need to be in order for people to trust and be okay with a system like this?
Well, I think it is explicitly a prerequisite in order to be able to have agents start doing this work. Not that you will always be going back and confirming that what they did was correct. There should be systems for that. We do have a whole evaluation framework and suite of tools that we can constantly be measuring what agents are doing even before we make a change to a skill or we make a change to an MCP server or make change to a system prompt. So that's important to have in place. But the need of constantly be always approve every tool request or approve every decision an agent made, I think more is a problem with the runtime and the configuration of the agent than it is on, is the agent just going to randomly do something incorrect that I'm scared of?
Yeah, like now when you go to Claude and you go to your connectors, you can actually set different configurations on each of the tools. Like, for example, Microsoft 365. If you want to read my emails, you could do that without needing my permission. But if you want to, let's say, read something from SharePoint, you need to ask my permission. I think the next layer of abstraction for agents in that kind of similar theme is, okay, you're an agent that can access all of my emails. You can reach out to someone within my firm, but if you want to reach out to someone outside of my firm, you need my permission. You can reach out to someone to schedule a meeting, But if you want to reach out to provide feedback on something, that's something that you need a human in the loop to like actually approve.
Yeah. And I think that the majority of tool use should not require human in the loop approval. Like if something's read only and there's not the correct, like if something's read only, there should be no approval needed. It's the amount of time that it takes for a human to approve every single thing that an AI wants to do puts this unnecessary restriction on this seemingly infinitely scalable intelligence that you're not using it to its full capabilities. And if you're not allowing it to run in an environment that's secure, and that's the reason why you're not allowing tool use to be automatically allowed, then solve for that secure environment first. That's actually your bottleneck, not the concern around AI doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I have always allow on almost all of my tools for that exact reason.
Speaking of, well, let's just segue into where we were last week. So we just got back from Bangalore on Sunday. We have an awesome team over the year. It was my first time going to India, not yours, but it was an awesome trip. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, so we have been kind of growing our India office for a little over a year now. I've worked with colleagues in Bangalore in my past jobs, and so I know what the culture is like there. I know what the spirit around technology is like there. And so I remember like this time, maybe a little bit over a year ago, we were talking about growing and being a lot more strategic in how we wanted to grow. And so Bangalore seemed like a pretty clear option for us. And so we've been growing the team pretty steadily. I think we've got a really great team over there. And so it was about time for us to kind of visit. So we visited for a week, and I thought it was great. Like it was nice to meet all of our team members in person, most of them for the first time. It was nice to kind of sit in that bullpen and listen to the conversations that they're having. And it was also nice to host an event there while we were there as well, and have people from around the area come and listen to us talk about AI, and also stick around afterwards and have dinner with us and talk to us about their backgrounds, what they're doing, what they're interested in. And it was just an energy that was very exciting. It was similar to New York, but different in its own unique ways. I think Bangalore is a little bit more tech focused, where I think New York is a little bit more interdisciplinary and covers a lot of different areas and verticals. And so it was almost, I think of Bangalore closer to like San Francisco than New York. And so it was a different kind of vibe to be around for a week. And I thought it was great. And I'm sure you also did.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I did not know that South India is the capital of the dosa. I learned that when we were there for like 3 or 4 days, and I was talking to Aparna and Shreyas, and they were like, what do you think of the dosas? I'm like, I haven't had a dosa. Like, what are you talking about? You can't come to Bangalore and not have a dosa. So I already had my lunch, and like I immediately had to stop what I was doing and get this massive dosa, and it was fire. It was actually excellent. So I'm glad they forced it on me, and then I got a couple more after that. But what was also crazy is that the flight path that we had to get there.
Travel was stressful.
Yeah,
for obvious reasons.
Well, one of the obvious reasons, in hindsight, but I didn't realize you fly directly over Iran in order to get to Bangalore from the US. And so can't do that anymore. And also we were supposed to connect through Dubai. Couldn't do that, at least at the time. And so we ended up getting rerouted to Mumbai. But even to fly to Mumbai, you kind of had to do a little bit of a half moon circle around Iran, fly over the Saudi peninsula, and then get to Mumbai. And then from there, we had the connection in Bangalore.
It's like 24 hours of travel one way.
Yes, including a dead sprint in the Mumbai airport. For very mild...
For reasons that were 100% your fault.
Yes, it was avoidable. That was my fault. But then on the way back, it involved a nice 2-hour layover in Rome. So, when in Rome, stay on the jet bridge, don't leave the plane, and watch a movie. It's the saying says, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, Jhanvi, it's been awesome having you on the pod. I think we need to do it a little bit more often.
Sure. I'm up.
Awesome. So, and with that, I just want to say thanks to everyone for tuning in again. This is the Hedgineer Podcast, technology, data, AI for asset managers, hedge funds, prop trading. You can follow us on TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and LinkedIn more often than anyone else. And until the next episode, Take it easy.